Hey, what is up, and welcome back everybody to another episode of the Film Chronicles. I know it's been a little while, but I've just been adjusting to a new work schedule, so just bear with me. But I've been working on this video for a little bit now. It's just basically an overall thought on the Halloween franchise as a whole. I wanted to release this during around Halloween time, but I couldn't find the time, so here we are. And anyhow, better late than never, right? So here we go. The Halloween franchise is one of those franchises that just redefined the horror genre itself. John Carpenter just came up with a great idea for a slasher film, and this is what we got. It's a real nice peek into actual evil versus trying to make a sympathetic villain of sorts and stuff like that. But these movies are famous. Everyone dresses up as Michael Myers at some point for Halloween, right? So it's a very respected character, respected slasher, and a respected entry in the horror genre itself. So basically all I'm gonna do is just kind of give my thoughts, my 2 cents on Halloween 1 and 2, and then how they went different with Halloween 4, 5, 6, and then how they retconned all that. So here we go. It's a big deep dive. It is a long video, but I do thank you guys for trying to even sit through this. That means a lot to me. So as I'm speaking, I'm just going to be showing clips of from various all the movies in order. I do skip Halloween 3 Season of the Witch just because it really has nothing to do with the story of Michael Myers. And then I also skip out on Halloween Resurrection just because I think that's a shit entry. But yeah, those are just my opinions. If you don't agree with them, that's cool. I'm not gonna cry about it. So anyway, here we go with the thoughts for Halloween 1 and 2. So Halloween 1 and 2 are probably my most favorite out of all the Halloween movies if I had to pick, although I will say that the actual true sequel from 2019 is probably a close tie with Halloween from 1978. So there's just that out of the way. But basically, man, what can I say about Halloween 1 and 2 that other people haven't already said? Like I said earlier, I redefined the genre as a whole. It plays really well on a lot of tropes. We do get Jamie Lee Curtis as kind of a actual competent spinal girl who can pretty much kind of hold her own against Michael, and we do get kind of a convoluted story with this. So originally, a lot of people think that Michael and Laurie Strode, that they're brother and sister within the movie, but they're not actually. Originally, it was written as Laurie Strode, her father was just so happening to sell the Michael Myers property, and once she went by to drop off the key, it's shown in the movie, but once that happens, he basically just ends up stalking her. So it's even more creepy without them having any sort of familiar ties or anything like that. And it's kind of crazy to imagine that this movie came out in 1978, and the effects, the gore, everything looks really good. Like I said, this movie's awesome. It's one of my favorite slasher films of all time. There's not much more that I can say. I love the characters. I love Michael Myers. I love Laurie Strode. I love the kids that she babysits, which actually come back for full circle, which is another thing I like about Halloween, is that a lot of the characters and everything, they feel very organic because they're shown again later on in some of the movies, so you do get this connection without it being forced or contrived. So it's very natural, and I love that. So then we get Halloween 2, arguably one of the best horror sequels of all time. I think it kind of elevated, entirely elevated Halloween to a whole new level. Just the fact that Michael survived and is still after Laurie Strode, and he figures this out just by walking around town while the police are looking for him, and he happens to hear some random bystanders boombox radio about the attack that happened to the young teenager Laurie Strode. So it's pretty insane. And then within the hospital, he just wreaks havoc. He kills pretty much everybody that's there with Laurie, and it's a late night shift, and he's just slaughtering everybody. So it's insane. And just the setting alone, trapped in the hospital, a place where you should feel safe, right? A place where you should feel like, okay, well, I'm okay here because I'm going to be getting help. But no, not here. Definitely not here at all. It's it's pretty good. and the ending's insane. It basically was designed as a true ending and a true sequel to finish off Halloween, because at the end, I mean, it's going to be spoiled anyway because I'm going to show it to you, but Loomis shoots Michael through both eyes and ends up blowing up some gas tanks and killing both of them, immolating themselves. So he makes the ultimate sacrifice, to get rid of Michael, and that was supposed to be the end of that. That's why Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, it didn't have, really anything to do with Michael himself. It's because Halloween 2 was written this way, but then, once Halloween 3 Season of the Witch came out, and, it kind of did a mixed bag of reviews. I personally haven't sat all the way through it. I can't get into it, so that's, my 2 cents there. But basically, once Halloween 4 came around, they brought Michael Myers back. And this time they started to focus on, I believe, a family relative of the Strodes, Michael's niece, Jamie Lloyd. So basically what happens with Halloween 4 is that it ignores Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and it actually picks up directly after Halloween Part 2. But somehow Michael's in a coma, so he's been comatose this whole time, but once he hears that he has a niece, he ends up waking up. He slaughters the nurses and everybody in the ambulance. It's pretty insane. It's a gnarly scene, but it's something that is true to Michael Myers' character. He's just pure evil. He's pure embodiment of evil, and they kind of go on to explain and give him more of a reason other than just that he kind of is mentally lost and mentally gone, and he's just ready to kill. And then if we're gonna be rating top death scenes, I think Halloween 4 has a lot of the best kill scenes, just because Michael Myers is more brutal and he's more savage, and it's very similar to how Jason Voorhees was portrayed later on in the sequels, being more brutal, more barbaric, I would say is probably the best word to describe it. So yeah, but Michael Myers is still this silent killer. So then they start to get into the lore about Michael and why he is the way he is. So basically, by the end of Halloween 4, they do shoot him down, they blow him up, and he falls down a little well, but he ends up escaping actually. And he drops into the river, he floats away, he ends up getting picked up by a random homeless person who's just there living, and unfortunately for that man who ends up nursing Michael back to health, that man gets killed, slaughtered, and then Michael goes back to his rampage once again. But basically by Halloween 5 we do have a sort of story for why Michael is the way he is, and basically that is that there is some cult out there, the cult of Samhain, and Samhain is actually a what is it? Here we go. It is a Celtic pagan ceremony. But basically the movie, as all movies do, it kind of exaggerates it, makes it more suspenseful, more scary. So basically this cult of Samhain, they're aiming to capture evil within Michael, and they do. And eventually by Halloween 5 and 6 they want to transfer it or kind of recreate the same thing that they made out of Michael, just this ruthless killing machine who has no other purpose in life other than to kill. So they do stray away from the brother-sister storyline that they try to do, and it's kind of interesting because John Carpenter also has went on record and said that he's regretted retconning the relationship between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. I think that's something to regret actually, just because by making them familial, it kind of it makes it lame in a way. There's no real suspense. It's more interesting to see that they're strangers, but he's just so unhinged that he ends up just kind of having this attachment, like a sick attachment to wanting to kill Laurie Strode and the Strode relatives. So kudos to them for kind of going off and not referencing that and trying to make that relevant anymore. I think that's a big plus. But yeah, Halloween 4 and 5 are fucking absolutely insane. Like brutal kills, brutal deaths, everything. And it's actually kind of interesting because a lot of the main characters, you want them to survive, but then they start biting the dust, and you think someone's going to be safe and they're not safe. So it's actually pretty crazy. But yeah, Halloween 5, Revenge of Michael Myers. Basically, he exactly that. He gets his revenge on everyone that tried to previously kill him. But at the end of the movie, Loomis and Jamie Lloyd, they actually end up teaming up, managing to pretty much render Michael unconscious at the cost of Loomis's life. He ends up having a stroke, beating down Michael Myers. And then that's where we get into what I was talking about earlier, where we start to see this cult of Sam Hain. We see a man in black arrive, shoot up the police station, and basically bust Michael out of jail. And then that picks up into Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, which is actually another one of my favorites. It's not the best story-wise, but it has Paul Rudd, and Paul Rudd always elevates everything that he's in. And not only is Paul Rudd in it, he's actually in it as a very important character. He's in it as Tommy Doyle, who was one of the kids that Laurie was babysitting during the events of the first movie. So like I said earlier, it has this very natural, organic feel where everything just kind of comes together at a certain point, and it's all connected to Michael Myers. So that's really interesting. I actually don't think that they gave a reason for why or how Dr. Loomis survived his stroke. But basically, ever since then, he's been retired, living as a hermit. So then this Dr. Lynn character goes out and tries to get him. Basically, now Jamie Lloyd is an adult, and she's been abducted by this cult. So this cult of Sam Hain, they're basically trying to recreate evil in the form, of a utero. So it's implied that Jamie's baby is technically Michael's baby. So there is some form of incest going on there just to add to that level of creepiness. But basically they made this baby and they wanted to be influenced by Sam Hain and the whole cult and basically be another killing machine just like Michael. For whatever reason that they have, these nefarious schemes or whatever. So Jamie Lloyd ends up being stalked. She ends up actually being killed within the opening scene of, the movie. And it's pretty crazy. But the rest of the movie happens to be that Michael Myers is looking for that baby. And it has to do with the cult basically making him do so. So he just obliterates everybody in his path, and they have their sights focused on a different kid, just because there's not just going to be like one kid every time. Like they're trying to do it to multiple children and recreate many Michaels. Basically, is what this cult is aiming to do. But basically, Tommy Doyle, he ends up figuring out like what's going on and everything like that, getting the help of Dr. Loomis and whatnot. It ends up being an advantage for them, but they start losing their friends and family, and it turns into another bloody mess basically. But it's still a pretty solid entry, I would say. It's not particularly my favorite. Some of the characters are just written poorly, or they only serve one purpose, which is to die. There's nothing else going on other than the interesting storyline of the cult of Sam Hain and how it relates to Michael, and why he goes off killing and doing all the things that he does. So it does add some crucial plot elements within the storyline and to Michael Myers as a character. But that ends up getting retconned anyway, despite Curse of Michael Myers being semi decent. Again, a mixed bag of reviews. None of them really have gotten that great of a review since Halloween 2 originally. So each one tried to add their different flair and stuff like this. I think this was the better narrative to go for, by introducing another explanation as to how Michael is the way he is. It was a smart move to do, although the execution is just kind of lacking. But it does serve some great scenes. We do get a lot of slaughters from Michael, a lot of good moments, and then we also do get Paul Rudd beating Michael basically with a lead pipe and winning essentially. And there's also some deleted scenes and stuff like that, because the ending is kind of interesting. Dr. Loomis ends up going back to see if Michael's even alive, and then all we hear is his scream. Little trivia for you guys, that's actually one of his last recorded lines is the yell that he does at the end of the movie. But that was supposed to be for a different purpose, not that Dr. Loomis died or got stabbed or whatever. He ends up being who Dr. Wynn was to Michael, basically like his handler in a way, like the one who guides him and makes sure that he fulfills his purpose of basically killing everybody in Haddonfield. So it's actually really cool. It was an interesting idea, but then Donald Pleasence did pass away, so rest in peace. One of the greatest characters, Dr. Loomis. Very, very well written character to compliment Michael Myers' insanity by having someone kind of understand him and what may be going on with him. But like I said, that's all kind of thrown under the bus, because once this is done and once the curse of Michael Myers ends up being over, the studios wanted to basically reboot it again. So then we end up getting another reboot. And basically that reboot is Halloween 20 or H2O, 20 years later. However you want to say it. Basically this movie just kind of ignores everything that happens after Halloween. So only Halloween 1978 counts. The Halloween 2 set in the hospital does not count. Obviously 4, 5, and this one, number 6, don't count. So it ends up making its own continuity, its own timeline, and we'll get to that right now. But I mean, I guess for all purposes, I think Curse of Michael Myers was the strongest out of the 4, 5, and 6 sequels. I think they had one of the better storylines. Like I said, just the cult idea is very rich, and they could have expanded on that further, and what they were aiming to do and stuff like that. But you can't replace Michael Myers. He's too iconic of a character, so I could totally see why they went with a retcon, essentially. But yeah, Halloween 20 years later. Here we have Laurie Strode, and Laurie Strode is once again in this continuity. Is Michael's sister. They are siblings, and she is, living with the form of PTSD that he is back in Haddonfield, and he's gonna get her and the family that she made and everything like that. Obviously all the characters in the movie tell her that she's just freaking out. She just needs to calm down, take a chill pill, but hey, little do you know, he's actually back, and he's gonna fucking kill everybody here. And he ends up actually killing the same nurse from Halloween, Dr. Loomis's colleague. So, again, like I said with Tommy Doyle, this continuity where you have these characters, they're very fleshed out, they're very natural to the story itself, and they still pop up in certain movies, and it does, overall make a good connection to everything, and it connects it all together. So yeah, I mean, Halloween 20 wasn't too bad. I think it's a little too self-indulgent, I guess. I think just the idea of a brother sister, I don't care for it. I think it just takes away from the story. But it does have good kills. It does have good moments. Josh Hartnett's in it. Jamie Lee Curtis comes back as Laurie Strode. It's pretty good. You also have LL Cool J in here, and he was pretty freaking awesome within this, and then also Deep Blue Sea. So it was one of those times where he was popping off. So it has a lot of good elements, but overall I think it's a weak entry in the Halloween franchise itself. It does have really decent moments. It makes Michael a little more I'm gonna say it again, barbaric, but he's feisty, and he's filled with rage, and he just doesn't stop. He doesn't let up, and he's smarter this time, and he's actually playing with his victims and toying with them, much like in Halloween 1978. So there's that. And then like I said, I'm not going to talk about Halloween Resurrection. I'll briefly touch upon it, but I'm not going to show anything, I guess is what I should specify. Halloween Resurrection takes place after this, as you'll see in the upcoming scenes. Michael and Laurie do battle it out, and they do, get a lot of blows, cut each other up, whatever, and then Laurie basically comes out the victor, but then, ambulance come, try to take him away, keep him for whatever reason, and try to, rehabilitate him because there's a chance or whatever the hell. So she decides, no, I'm going to end this right now. She steals the ambulance, she drives off, she ends up crashing it with him in it because he starts to wake up, and then she cuts off his head. But then in Resurrection, they retcon that once again. Another retcon for the Halloween franchise itself, which is actually insanely ridiculous. So I'm not going to show anything from Halloween Resurrection. I just think it's a weak-ass entry. It's probably the worst of the Halloween movies, next to Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. So there's that. And spoiler alert, another big thing that they end up doing in Resurrection is they end up killing Laurie Strode off in the first, 15 minutes. It's pretty dumb, I mean, there's not much more I can say. I understand the idea to want to bring back Michael Myers and to want to continue the storyline set up in Halloween 20 years later, but it just doesn't work. So, that's why I'm not going to talk about it. It's lame. It's weak. It's predictable. It doesn't add anything to the story. If anything, it takes away from the story. So, with that being said, that's pretty much how I feel about these ones in particular. But I still will say Halloween 20 is a better one of the franchise for sure. Not the best, but one of the better ones to come out. A lot of good stuff that was shown, a lot of cool killings and stuff like that, and yeah, I mean, other than that, I think the ending was really cool too. If it stood definitive, but it actually ended up not being definitive, so that became kind of an issue, since like I said before, they always tend to retcon things, so this was pretty much the second retcon. Well, not technically, the first retcon, since it dismissed all the other previous movies, and then Resurrection afterwards retcon this one by switch baiting the person behind the mask as supposedly the ambulance driver or something like that. It's kind of silly, so I'm not going to talk about Halloween Resurrection just because that movie is not one of my favorites. It's probably the worst Halloween film on my list, to be honest with you guys. So there's that, even though the scene is really cool, but yeah, Halloween 20 was kind of the last better rehash at Michael Myers up until they came out with Halloween 2018 from Danny McBride and David Gordon Green, who both were involved with Pineapple Express, Gordon Green being the director, and then Danny McBride playing Red, and I think he also had some writing credit on that. And then yeah, it's pretty awesome. You have a lot of comedians kind of taking their hand at horror and kind of putting their own twist on it, which is really unique to the genre itself. So I'm excited for more voices like these. Halloween 2018 is probably one of my favorite horror movies to come out in recent years, even though it is the same story that we know, but it adds a lot more to it. It takes away a lot of kind of the shittier parts of the franchise, such as the whole brother-sister relationship. I like how it kind of mocks it in the movie, and makes it more apparent that they have no relation, and it's just this unhinged dude that's going after Laurie Strode. So I think that's a really cool aspect of the movie itself. So that's a big plus to it. The cast did great. Jamie Lee Curtis comes back and kills it as Laurie again, suffering from PTSD, anxiety, whatever you name it. She's suffering from it hard, and it trickled into her family, with her daughter and her granddaughter. Even though her granddaughter and her have a great connection in the film, I think that was a good aspect to throw upon. And yeah, another thing about this film is that, the killings are brutal, and, Laurie Strode is a badass, and, it's even more solidified that she's a badass from Halloween 1 and 2 originally. And the continuation, too, stems from Halloween 1 and 2 specifically. So that's another cool thing about this movie, is that they don't try to kind of bury that. They just pick up from where Halloween 2 left off, where, they seemingly blew him up in the hospital, and then they moved on from there. I think it's like 30-40 years later, set in the timeline. So it's really good. It's really straightforward. It's brutal. It's a good pace of a movie. It doesn't hold back. The only thing I kind of have to complain on is I just kind of wish maybe there was a little more killings, just to kind of be, a bigger splash back, since it was a while since we had any sort of Halloween movie about Michael Myers, since Resurrection had come out at that point. But, again, it was still flawless to me nonetheless. I think it's one of the better I guess we could call it a sequel, right? Because it's not a reboot, it's not reimagining, it's just a straight sequel. So I like it, and it's awesome. We get great scenes. We get Laurie's trapped up house just in preparation for Michael Myers to come back. Trap set up, ready to go after him and fight against him, and it's pretty badass, and it's brutal, and she does get the upper hand, and it's awesome. Everything in this movie works. Like I said, I can't say enough about it. It breathed new life into the franchise itself, and that's something that it needed, since coming from previous sequels not doing so well. And those directors' takes not really taking off with the audience, but I think this one did really well, and I can't wait to see the sequel, Halloween Kills, which was supposed to come out this year, but has been pushed back since because of COVID. So that's another thing to look forward to as well. I think they're done filming or, doing some sort of post-production, something like that, but that movie's rumored to go off the rails just as much as this, if not more. Gordon Green had promised more, tenaciousness from Michael Myers himself, and more returning characters. I believe Tommy Doyle is going to be coming back. The community of Haddonfield are going to be involved, as over the years Michael's killings would presumably affect them and their families, assuming that he killed certain loved ones of them. So it's going to be cool to see that aspect again, because that was kind of explored in Halloween 4 and 5, where mobs were kind of gathering up and going after him just to get him down and kill him. But he always gets the upper hand against him. So I'm excited to see this carnage that they're promising. It looks awesome, and yeah, it's definitely a big contender on my most anticipated list for the next coming years and the future of how cinema is going to play out. So we'll sit tight and see how it goes. And of course I'll report on it if we get any more information. We at least for sure know that Jamie Lee Curtis will be back as Laurie Strode. We do know that her granddaughter and her daughter will be back, but I do think one of them is going to bite the dust in this one, as I think they've read on to say that Laurie Strode is going to get even more tested with how vicious Michael becomes. So I think it's going to be a good sequel to go off of. Usually the second sequel is kind of the one that turns the tide, in the sense of that, because I believe that they promised a trilogy of these new Halloween movies, if I'm not mistaken. I think I might be speaking out of my butt. If I am, just correct me in the comments, it's no problem. But if I am to be right, then the trilogy kind of framework would suggest that the middle movie would be kind of the balls to the wall movie, much like how Empire Strikes Back was with Star Wars and such like that. That's usually kind of how it goes. So I'm excited to see what becomes of Halloween Kills, and everything that happens with the story and where it goes, and if it truly is going to get a third movie to kind of complete the full circle, I guess, in what they're trying to accomplish. I'm not sure. Blumhouse Studios and Danny McBride and David Gordon Green are teaming up again for this, so it would be safe to say that they would team up again if it was for a third one. So they definitely have some sort of finish line in mind for what's going to come. And yeah, as a Michael Myers fan, you should get excited. I'm excited. This is one of the most iconic slashers, and this reiteration here did not hold back, and it brought back the life to the dying franchise. Even though some of the movies are beloved, and there's cult followings for certain ones, but I still think that this one is the more definitive movie, as it really put Michael Myers back onto the mindset of the people who maybe have forgot about him, or just thought that the movies weren't that interesting anymore. You know what I mean? So with that being said, that's going to kind of wrap up my thoughts and my final kind of opinions on this. I'm super excited, as I specified before, for Halloween Kills, whenever that does get an official announcement again and it actually comes true this time. In the meanwhile, make sure you guys are liking, commenting. If you guys are new here, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We did grow in some subscribers. We're at 61 now. The goal is to get to 100 subscribers, so if you guys could help out with that would be super awesome, and I would be nothing more than gracious if you guys could do that. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, this has been the Film Chronicles. Thank you guys once again. Have an awesome day.